good to be here. This is an interesting experience for me. It's my first webinar, so bear with me for any technical difficulties or anything like that. Thank everyone for being here. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to level up your SEO for the holiday season. Traditionally, SEO is a long game, so however, there are a few quick wins that you can do to get your site ready for Q4 and beyond. So let's jump into it. All right, it's me. I'm Barron, Barron Rossborough. I'm Hog Media's internal content marketing manager, and not self-named editor-in-chief. I've been doing SEO since about 2015, so about 5 years now. I've helped multiple sites rank on the first page of Google search results, many in the #1 search result, and I've done a lot for keywords that have over 100,000 searches a month. So big search volume, big competition, big results. And yeah, I have a background in PR and creative writing, and I'm a rare LA native. About Hawk Media. Hawk Media is a full-service marketing agency founded on the principle that every company, no matter how big, no matter how small, deserves access to CMO level marketing. So, when you work with us, we're your outsourced CMO. So we work as an extension of your team, and we bring results. And these are a few things that I'll go over in this presentation today. It doesn't make a ton of sense right now, but it will, trust me. The housekeeping. So these are just the basics for, when you start a conversation about SEO, it's not always the best understood topic because it is a very niche and sort of specialty thing that only a certain type of person gets into, or so I've experienced. So what isn't SEO? Google isn't SEO, SEM isn't SEO, building backlinks isn't SEO, and writing a blog post isn't SEO. While SEO does comprise a good number of those things in, building up your authoritativeness, your site's standing on the SERPs, all of these things play a part, but they're not simply SEO. Google isn't the only search engine. SEM refers to paid, which can influence SEO, but not directly. Building backlinks isn't SEO, just for the simple fact that backlinks aren't the end-all be-all of SEO. They are a ranking signal for SEO, but that's not all that SEO is, and there's more that you can do. And writing a blog post isn't SEO. So there's a ton of content out there. Just writing a blog post and putting it up is not, in most cases, because SEO is never black and white. In most cases, writing a blog post won't help you. Writing a blog post and posting it won't help you rank in the top search results that easily. What is SEO? SEO is short for search engine optimization. It is the practice of optimizing your site and your web pages on your website with, top tier back end user experience and top tier content. SEO is a source for sustainable organic traffic. So organic traffic is some of the most valuable collateral you can have as a brand. Sustainable organic traffic means that, you know, your site, one, works well, two, is serving a purpose. So if you have a web page with good content, good responsiveness, good load times, good, any number of things, you can rank well, you can get into the #1 search result, you can see X amount of traffic from that search result, and that traffic can convert into revenue. And it is, Google SERPs are the real front page of the internet, with over, well, as far as Google goes, yeah, it's basically the front page of the internet, because they're, you know, even just yesterday there were over 7 billion Google searches, which is pretty astounding. Why SEO? This is a topic that's tough to boil down into a few minutes or a few slides, but I'm going to give it a shot. The top reason to do SEO is something I stated in the last slide, but sustainable organic traffic. It helps you get noticed, and it helps you target your audience with a purpose. It's not just your audience finding you, it's you seeking them out by knowing what they're searching for, what they're interested in, and how to best fulfill that interest. So the top 3 search results pull in over 50% of the click-through rate from the search engine results page, or the SERPs, on Google. And the trend is pretty similar across all search engines: Yahoo, Bing, DuckDuckGo, anything you want to use. The trend is going to be fairly similar, with the top few results pulling in the most traffic, simply because people don't want to do that much work to find the answer to their query. And, you know, I don't blame them. So how do you calculate your ROI from SEO? It's a sort of an age-old question, something a lot of people still don't understand, but the simplest way I've found is figuring out the searches per month of a keyword, dividing that by the click-through rate, and from there you get a number of users clicking through to your site, and then you can sort of extrapolate the number of qualified users that you get at your site, averages from new traffic, and then take those qualified users and then divide them by your site's conversion rate. And then you can figure out, you know, how many users you're getting from maybe one specific search term per month, and how many of those are converting, and what dollar amount those converted at. And if you have your tracking set up properly in HubSpot and Google Analytics, you should actually be able to track that sort of end to end, from when they clicked to when they purchased. And that's the ideal, to be able to follow a customer through their entire journey, and which is something that's sort of difficult on search, because it is usually more top of funnel in a lot of cases. And so with that, take these statistics with a grain of salt, because Google's always testing new things, and things change very quickly. Even recently, Google has been, well, for years now, Google's been testing SERP features like rich snippets and shopping carousels and knowledge graphs and things like that. And a lot of those things will steal traffic from your search result, especially if you're the #1 search result. In a lot of cases, in the for the first search, for the #1 search result, if you have something above it, like a carousel or a featured snippet, you can see sometimes as much as 20% drop off in click-through rate. So, all right, I've covered the basics. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's get into the good stuff. All right, BFCM, SEO, and beyond. It's all about user experience. It's all about the experience. If you ask yourself, should I write this blog post? Should I make this change in my website? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I be doing something differently? Always tie it back to the user experience, because if it doesn't improve your user experience, it's likely not going to improve your SEO, and it's likely not going to improve your site in general. So what's new? The newest update for Google is something, it's TBD 2021, but it's something every website needs to be prepared for. So this update will be comprised of core web vitals along with a number of other ranking factors, existing ranking factors, but core web vitals are just sort of a fancy name for fast load time, which really isn't anything new. You just want your pages to load quickly so your users get the best experience and don't bounce. And the threshold for that is about 2.5 seconds. You'll want your main content to be loaded on your website. And then from there, it's interactivity. You want your first input delay to be under 100 milliseconds. It's pretty fast, but with the processing power and broadband capabilities today, it is very feasible. Your site should process users' first input or interaction with your website almost immediately. Don't get held up by slow and chunky JavaScript or photos or anything else like that. That's something you should specifically pay attention to. And then your site needs a good foundation. So visual stability. One of the most annoying things I can think of when I'm visiting a website is starting to load the content and then the page just jumps to a different section, and now I have to scroll all over the place to figure out what's going on. And it's probably one of the most useful new ranking signals for me as an individual, as a civilian. And then there are the classics. You have your mobile friendliness, your safe browsing, your HTTPS, and no intrusive interstitials. So you'll want your site to be mobile friendly. That's a given nowadays, because the majority of browsing these days is done on mobile. And then you'll want your users to have a safe browsing experience. You don't want them to feel like at any point that their information is compromised, and that leads into safe browsing and HTTPS, which is a secure protocol that your site should have adopted by now. And it is a ranking signal. And no intrusive interstitials, which is no intrusive pop-ups, basically. And this is something that has been a ranking factor for a little while now, and something I think sites have gotten a lot better at. I don't long for the days where a site used to have a pop-up that would make their main content inaccessible. So kudos to Google on that one as well. So 3 things you can do right now for fast load times. So decrease your bloat. Make sure images on your website are compressed and optimized. So you want to get your image files as light, make your image files as light as possible. So that can happen in 2 ways. 1, use smaller image sizes, decrease the image size. And 2, compress your images. And most CMSs actually do this on their own now, but it's something to think about. And a lot have size limits to keep people within a certain boundary. And that's something that goes towards faster load times. And there's optimizing your plugins. Plugins can sometimes, while helpful, while they serve a purpose, they can really slow down your site by executing unnecessary JavaScript at the wrong time. So while your main content is loading, you don't want anything to really get in the way of that. And before your main content can load, any JavaScript in between the start of loading your main content and the end of loading your main content will execute first, will execute before the main content has loaded. So they have a tendency to be pesky, and some run very labor-intensive code. And then optimize caching. So this is something for the more tech-savvy, something a little more, advanced, but I know from experience that WordPress offers this a pretty standard, simplified version of this. Caching images and static site features makes it easy for maybe not first-time visitors, but returning visitors to have a better site experience. When your page is loading, they already have those images stored, so they'll pop up immediately. And you can even, in some content management systems, you can even do timed refreshes of your caching. So if you want to get down into the nitty-gritty there, it's a fun rabbit hole to go down if you're into that sort of thing. 4 things you can do right now for quick inputs. So this image, this GIF on the right, or GIF, I don't know how you want to say it. Don't shoot the messenger. This GIF on the right side of the screen, or my right side of the screen, shows what happens when you have JavaScript executing in your HTML before the main content is loaded. It'll stop doing everything else to execute that JavaScript. And this is just sort of a visual representation of that. And Google has termed that total blocking time, which is the time it takes for one piece of JavaScript to load, after 50 milliseconds. So anything that takes longer to load than 50 milliseconds will immediately start that counter for total blocking time, because it's blocking the other processes from initiating on your site. And while it's stopping those processes from initiating, your website is not interactive, because your website can't process any inputs. It can't process any other activities until those instances load. And some good ways to break this up are breaking up long tasks, reducing unnecessary JavaScript, and running more specific and targeted JavaScript. So unnecessary JavaScript, like I mentioned in the last slide, can take the form of plugins, can take the form of tracking code, just a number of things that can just slow down your site. It's important that your site be agile as possible and stay pretty lean. So make decisions carefully about what you add and the purpose it serves, because every single thing should serve a purpose. Just like, to use a strange analogy, in a movie, every single shot should serve a purpose towards the director's narrative. Every single element of your website should be purposeful and should be thought out ahead of time. And then running more targeted, running more specific JavaScript. Many instances of code can have your site pulling have your site calling an unnecessary amount of information. So let's say you have a piece of code that initiates on your site, and it asks the backend to call 2,000 nodes of X information. You can tailor that. You can find better code. You can find someone to write better code that will narrow down what the needs of that web page are, what the needs of your website are, and help it parse it down to 10, 20, 50 nodes. That will help your site load faster and provide a better user experience. And here are a couple of things you can do right now to ensure visual stability. To ensure visual stability, you can employ things like continuous scrolling to get around that pesky content layout issue. And continuous scrolling will make it so that there's never an end to the content that shows up for the user, and there's never a break or interruption in their experience with the content. So it flows well, and it provides a good user experience. And then you can add a load more button, and that word does not normally have a G at the end, but make sure when you add a load more button, it can be tricky because it can be done wrong in a lot of ways. at a lot of times, because the content, it can make the content more jumpy. Make sure the main content initializes when you add a load more button. When that button is clicked, make sure the content initializes in under 500 milliseconds, because that's the amount of time it takes from when a user takes an action on your website and before Google starts counting it again towards your CLS budget, or so I'm calling it. And a good way to get around that is to have a load more button, but have the content past the load more button preloaded. So users will have a seamless experience, and the site will see, even if it's not that fast, it will seem faster, and it will send the right signals to Google. And one more thing, well, this won't be the last thing, but don't neglect your content. Your content is still incredibly important. And in 2013, Google first introduced the concept of EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So content is still king. Search engines will always, at least for now, and hopefully for the foreseeable future, prioritize the best content. And the best content meets a number of criteria. So high EAT content displays one of a number, or displays high aptitude in a number of areas. So time, effort, expertise, and talent or skill. EAT doesn't discriminate against your type of website. So there's a way to figure out there's different priorities in different types of website. Let's say you have a news website, the way that's rated against how maybe a gossip website would be rated would be sort of completely different, as they have different values, but it can all be boiled down into expertise. Who's authoring the page, who's experienced, who's put in the time, who's done the research to make an accurate, full representation of the topic. And you can do that on both ends of the spectrum. Authoritativeness, this is a big part of where backlinks come into play. It signals to Google that your site is well regarded, is accurate, is fundamentally true to a lot of the people in your niche, in your space. It helps build up your site's credibility, and it helps with your site's trustworthiness as well, because the more people you have, the more websites, or credible websites, you have citing the work you do, the web pages that you built, the content you put out, the more that signals to Google that the work is worth noting and rewarding, with a better position in the search results. And trustworthiness. Sites should always be transparent about their content. It should be accurate, and they should be legitimate. Clear citations, stating who the author is in some cases, and offering contact information, which seems somewhat antithetical, but you can get around that by having a form or something like that on your website, but some way that users can reach out, or some way that you can receive either criticism, praise, let the world in to help you edit your website. And then here we go. And these are some of the acronyms I've used throughout this presentation. And it's not a pop quiz, so don't worry. I thought they'd just be good to note. So SEO, search engine optimization, clearly is the overarching topic of all of this. EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness. While it's not a direct ranking signal for Google, there are a number of indirect signals that Google uses to gauge this. LCP, largest contentful paint, is the process of loading your main content. FID, first input delay, is the time it takes for a user's action to be to take effect on your website. Cumulative layout shift is something I went into depth about. It's when your site moves, jumps, or makes some motion unexpectedly that damages the user experience. Total blocking time is the time after 500 milliseconds it takes for your main content to load, which can be a good indicator of good correlation to a first input delay. Then MC is main content. QRG is the quality rating guide. It's the standards published by Google in 2013 that sort of give website and content creators a guideline for how to build EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. SERP, search engine results page, it's that thing you get when you type something into Google. It's nothing special, but it is incredibly valuable, and it is changing all the time. So you have to keep up with it, or it will leave you behind, unless you have incredible content. FCP, first contentful paint, is the first part of your main content that loads. Time to interactive is the time it takes for your site, for your main content to load before your user can complete an interaction with your website. And SEM I threw in here because SEO is not SEM. They are relatively distinct. SEM refers to search engine marketing, refers to paid advertising. While they can feed off of each other, they are sort of distinct disciplines that don't always correlate. But let's say you should always aim to own the sponsored search block in branded search terms. And here are some resources. So, if you guys want to take a look at this deck when everything's said and done, I think I'm well over time, but if you guys want to take a look at this deck, feel free to, and I've included all of the resources, well, most of the resources I've used to research this topic and many will take you down a much deeper rabbit hole and get more and more technical as you dive deeper into it. So enjoy, and thank you. Stay in touch with Hawk Media. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach us by email at hello@hawkmedia.com, our website, hawkmedia.com, and click on the link there when and if you look through this presentation to get a free consultation.